And we're back. Welcome to Another Action Beyond, your Starfinder news, reviews, and interviews podcast. I'm your host, Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param, and I'm joined by...
Alexander Agunis, the Everyman Gamer.
And I'm James. I write Code Switch.
All right, everyone. We have been talking about Pathfinder, Starfinder, and comparing the two for a little bit of a while now. And you two have been knees or elbows or dice deep, depending on how the correct phrasing applies to role-playing games, to the Dead Sun's Adventures path. Now, recently, you have told me you are reaching its conclusion, beginning the final chapter, which leads me to wonder, how does Starfinder handle high-level play? Something the D20 RPG systems have historically not been the best at, especially the 3.5 version.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there's not as much rocket tag. Like, it never feels like you're just going to, you need to get a spell off where you're just going to explode. That's a good sensation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow. It's like, I can walk into combat and I can get punched a few times and I'm not dead. It's amazing. Let me tell you how many times I got punched once and died in Reign of Winter. The answer was more than you might think.
Well, I just finished up Reign of Winter with my Pathfinder group, and yeah, there was a whole lot of there was some combats where my players would die multiple times in the same combat.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's brutal. Was it Artrosa? It was Artrosa, wasn't it? Pathfinder 1 is basically over. We could say it was Artrosa.
It was the end boss of book 5 was terrible for that. Like, one of my poor players died 3 times in that one fight.
One of our friends got one of his arms and both of his both of his arms and one of his legs ripped off. It was both arms, wasn't it?
Oh, that's just brutal.
It was one arm, one leg.
Oh, one arm, one leg.
And then he got mind-legged or something?
But then they were legs on opposite sides of his body, right? It was like the left arm and the right leg, or the other way around.
Yeah, and then once again he got turned to the intelligence of a toddler and was basically not in the rest of the fight.
And I bet they wished they were Starfinder characters, where that's not such a big deal. You can go to your local Home Depot and get a good robot leg screwed on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about just like getting, once again, eviscerated in the first round of combat.
Well, I will say, though, that because getting new limbs is relatively easy, I feel like there are places where Starfinder's like, we could just rip these off like they're just pieces of a Kit Kat bar.
There's definitely a Starfinder Society scenario where it's like, oh, you failed to save, you lost a leg, good luck. And you're like 3rd level at this point? Yeah. It's really mean.
Thirsty is thirsty for blood, that's for sure.
I'm sorry, there's 2 of them. There's another scenario that does that around the same level tier.
Listen, why would you let those perfectly good limbs stay attached to the body when you have all the tools in the game to replace them? When players have an easy answer to a problem, that just means you get to throw the problem at them more. Actually, Starfinder does a really good job with that with flight. Flight is a topic that usually, when people talk about in Pathfinder, like, flying breaks the game because, it's like, oh, we're gonna take it so that all the players can fly and most of the monsters can't fly, and so then the players just rain death down from above. But in Starfinder, it's like anybody who's level 4 or higher can buy a jetpack. Like, right. Flight is easy to get.
Plus, there's the proliferation of ranged combat options. So just because you're flying, it doesn't automatically mean it's good for you. I mean, you're basically just giving up cover.
Do you know what my favorite part about flying in Starfinder is? There are enough guns with a long enough range that I don't have to calculate the range of like a diagonal going from the bottom left of one corner to the top right of another corner. I could just be like, oh hey, I have a sniper rifle. It doesn't matter. You're within 1,000 feet.
I have a dirty secret for all of my jamming in Pathfinder and Starfinder. I never calculate. I just shrug. I go, that seems about right.
Yeah, I have never accurately calculated A squared, B squared, C squared in the middle of a combat session. And any system that asks you to is flawed.
There's only one person I've ever seen do that, and that is Tim.
Oh, Tim.
Tim can do it.
Yeah, Tim Stapleton, out in Ireland. Yeah, he's also amazing. It's great because like. We've played with like some of the best GMs like on the East Coast. Like I've never seen Jen McTeague do A squared C squared equals C squared A squared B squared C squared like at the middle of a table. Jen is usually just like And Jen is like a mathematical genius, and she just doesn't care. She's like, nah, it's good. This monster isn't going to be alive for long enough for this math to be worth it.
Mhm.
And also a bit on that flight end, like there's a biotech upgrade in the in Armory that's seventh eye level 7, 6,400 credits, and boom, you have wings.
Mhm.
Yeah, totally. Or there's the amazing 4-step souls. Those are great. You take little magic generators, you just put them in the pores of your feet, and now all of a sudden your body just makes force discs that you could just walk on. It's amazing. I love that upgrade.
And not to mention the slew of species you can be in the different alien archives that just start with wings.
I feel like the big two are Strix and Dragonkin. What do you think, James?
Barathu. No, Barathus have a float. They don't necessarily have a
I
fly.
don't remember. I think they just float through the air above ground. I think they're like the
Or
what is it? Maybe those are the cool worm ones, right? I
Yeah,
don't.
the electric snail worms.
I know their art has them kind of floating above the ground.
Hmm.
Maybe. But there are options, I guess, is what we're trying to say, that you can just have flying. Although one of my favorite things is how they have the kind of like the super jump mechanic in a lot of things, where it's like it's a fly speed, but if you don't land on the ground, you just fall. I love that. I wish more things in the game use that mechanic, because I just want to see people jump into the sky and go.
Yeah, and we have to look at like what your common environments in a Starfinder campaign are. That flight is also not the super end all be all, because if it's an outdoor adventure, the game has to assume you have access to your starship or a similar transportation device, such that physical barriers on the ground are rarely going to be effective unless there's extraneous circumstances. And a lot of times, the environments you're going to find yourself adventuring in include things like space stations and abandoned starships and underground supervillain bases, places where you have very contained corridors, and leaving them means suffocating in the vacuum of nothingness.
I'm pretty sure I've only played two. Now, granted, James has played so much more than I have, but I'm pretty sure I've only played two Starfinder adventures that had no ceiling, and that was the one that you do with the creepy internal crabs. You know what I'm talking about, James? I think it's 128. I think is the number, and the other one was Temple of the 12.
Mm.
I mean, I
There's a
guess
fair amount.
I guess parts of book 4 doesn't have the was it the Shattered Sky City or whatever that book is called.
Yeah.
That I guess that book doesn't have ceilings in some parts, but all the parts that like really matter usually have ceilings. So I don't know.
I don't know. Sometimes it, like, if you're in a big enough place as an Absalom station, the ceiling is there, but it's so high up it might as well not be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's kind of where it falls into it with a lot of like Dead Sun's place. It's like, yeah, you can go to the atmosphere limit if you'd like. It's just there's nothing up there. Congratulations.
You've made it to the top. Here's your achievement and your one achievement point.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And
And
Barathus have a extraordinary flight speed of 30. I was
Oh,
like, I
cool.
thought they had it.
That's sweet.
honestly, and because, like I said, the proliferation of melee combat, you fly up there, it just means that you've become the instant target for all the sniper rifles around. And
It's true.
Melee combat is so rare; it's surprising when it happens.
Listen though, when it does happen though, Fight Boy just breaks everybody.
I feel like in Dead Suns there's been a fair amount of melee combat.
Listen. If there wasn't intentionally, you've had to make it because I make every combat a melee combat.
No, and a lot of times they actually do have a backup. Like some of your chaotic evil baddies enjoy melee combat.
Yeah.
Your lawful evil baddies are like, sure, we're good with it, but I have patented the technique of exploding flash grenades in your hands and taking the damage.
Yeah.
All right, so we've defied gravity. So that's just one of the ways that Starfinder makes high level combat fun, by making in one aspect of high level combat that we're used to in our fantasy games pretty commonplace even at low levels. So
Right.
flight's not the obstacle it used to be, and it's one of the big four reasons that high level play is a little bit problematic.
Why, Param? What are the other 3 reasons high level play is problematic?
Well, a lot of them are okay. It takes so dang long.
Duration.
Yeah, some of my high level Pathfinder and 3.5 combats used to last like literally, hours. My final for Reign of Winter, I talked about this on a recent Direction, was a 5-hour fight for one fight.
Ours was like 2 or 3, right?
Yeah, it was about that.
I don't think it was longer than 2 or 3. We also had a turret that shot arrows, so that's okay. All right, so we got duration.
Okay. Then you have what are called encounter winning spells, which flight was one of the options available for a counter ending because, ooh, look, you can't shoot me. I kill you all from up here. Also, encounter ending spells include things like sleep and savor deaths or complete savor sucks, the high level magic options that just instantly win the combat. What makes the rocket tag the rocket tag.
Right. So we got duration, and we've got, I guess we could call that savor suck spells, or just game ending spells.
I just call them encounter ending spells. At low levels, that includes things like flight and levitation. At high levels,
Encounter Bane.
Yep.
Encounter Bane spells. I love that name. All right, let's go. We got encounter Bane spells. We got duration.
All right, the other thing we have is the divination, the plot breaking spells. And abilities.
Encounter breaking, plot breaking, duration.
Yeah, when you have abilities that says, "Hey, Mr. Game Master or Mrs. Game Master, won't you tell me all the secrets right now? Let's avoid this pesky investigation stuff and just scry fry the bad guy."
Okay.
If your games or scenarios do not accompany for that, that's on you.
Yeah, but it's a common complaint.
And last but not least, number 4. We've got a plot bane, encounter bane, duration bane.
And
flight was the first.
I thought that was part of encounter bane.
It was mixed in, but it was more like being able to fight at different ranges. Like if an enemy, for instance, had like a succubus or something that has natural flight, and players don't, that's an instant win. Vice versa.
I mean,
but basically, movement being really powerful, like stupid ghosts.
I agree with you on some of those, but I think in the case of the succubus is a grapple-based monster, so like being flying doesn't matter if her win condition is just to hug you into negative level death. But I think for other monsters, I agree with you.
Succubus might have been a poor choice. I just remember succubus having wings.
I accept this.
And I guess finally it is is teleportation. And I guess that goes back into encounter building, but it kind of loops into flight in the presence of the starship, basically completely negating the intermediate challenges of play. When everything is just, let's go instantly to the objective, let's skip all the fun dungeon, let's skip all the fun encounters and build up, and just pop around like we're playing Ultima Online with a full book of runes and just ignore everything.
Which one of these would you like James and I to talk about first, since we're your experts?
I want to know about time. I think that's my biggest concern. The others we've learned methods around as experienced gamers. So do Starfinder combats at the high level still drag on for hours?
So I don't know about you, James, but the longest combat I think we've ever done is 2 hours, and that's only because the one fight ran into 4 other rooms, pulled 4 other fights, and then we had to do all of them at the same time. That was about 2 hours, right?
Mm-hmm. That was about 2 hours in total.
Yeah. So, like, a fight where we literally, like, I think you calculated the final CR of all that at, like, CR 30, you said, right?
No, it's closer to, like, CR 19 or 20 between all the encounters.
Yeah, and for reference, we were level 11 at that point. So, like, it was just, like, the tactics were like, oh, this person goes here and triggers this encounter, which triggers this encounter, and everyone just runs at you. And that fight where we fought CR 19 worth of creatures, probably something like 10 enemies between CR 8 and 11, I'd say.
You had somebody, I think somebody was there with CR 12.
Okay, so like between 8 to 12, it probably took us 2 hours. Like, combats are not long in Starfinder, in my experience.
So what contributes to that? I mean, some of the time crunch that we've seen traditionally in D20 role-playing games has been the 1 billion attacks. Like you've been behind an archer that shoots 7 arrows and calculating all those attacks and damages, or the swarm delay when you get a good conjurer on the field that just floods the battle with summoned enemies, or a druid that has a pack of animal companions, or other basically characters that have taken control of multiple characters, that slows things down. So, what is making the Starfinder combat shorter than we're used to?
Do you want to start, James?
Yeah, I'll say the proliferation of magic. While there are a lot of magic users, because your spell list is so limited, you generally know what the spells that you take and you know them pretty well. Unlike in Pathfinder, you have a lot of options to take a lot of spells you don't always use, and that is time wasted when you go, "Is this a situation for this? I'm going to read through this. I have to coordinate around this." In Starfinder, you're more likely to have 3 or 4 spells that you're really good with, and you're going to remember to use those and how they work.
So that's analysis paralysis, is what that's usually called.
Oh, that's a catchy name.
Yeah.
Along with that, because your regular attack options are so good, people look for cover and then they look for how to attack instead of trying to find a secret advantage to things because you generally feel like you're able to participate. So you're more willing to try something rather than try for the best thing.
Okay.
Kind of like choice paralysis thing again.
I also think that a big reason is because of how Starfinder's math changes from low level to about starting in the mid level play. You'll have to tell me whether or not you agree with this, James, but it's been my experience that at low level, creatures seem to have a slightly higher AC and fewer hit points, but as you get to about like 9th, 10th, 11th level, that starts to change. The AC doesn't scale quite as high compared to attack bonuses, but creatures start getting a huge amount of hit points to compensate for it.
Yeah.
And what that ends up doing has a number of effects on the game. The first effect is that at higher levels, you actually start to hit more. And so you're like whittling away, but combats just still take time because it takes you like 3, 4, maybe 5 hits in order to actually down something that's your CR. But like you're readily hitting it. So like combat is moving, things are fast paced, and your attack options feel like they're meaningful because pretty much, since nobody has a poor BAB, anybody can pick up a gun, shoot it, and feel pretty confident that they're going to have at least a decent shot in order to reduce it.
Decent shot.
And then the other thing that's interesting about that is how the summon monsters work, because they were brought up specifically as something that lowers the speed of the game.
Right.
Because you're always summoning monsters that are a significantly lower CR than you are, the monsters that you summon tend to be pretty easy to dispatch, in my experience. It usually takes 1 or 2 hits. And especially like as you get higher and higher levels, like the game incentivizes you like, hey, are you trying to distract the enemy, or are you like legitimately trying to hurt them? And if you're legitimately trying to hurt them, then you typically want to have one big monster, the higher CR, and it's worth more of your time to have that big monster to fight, because if you summon a bunch of little guys, they are probably not going to hit, and one good hit will kill them. But they are at the advantage if you are trying to distract an enemy, because generally speaking, most creatures are only going to ever have 2 attacks, maybe 3 if they have like Soldier or Solarian graphs at high levels. So you have these little dudes that, yeah, they're going to go down in 1 hit, but they're going to make you waste those actions. And I've been on the receiving end of that one time when I GM for James, where basically the party had to cross this mile-long gulf with a sniper shooting at them, and James's strategy to get across was every like round or 2, he would just summon 3 of these trash Aeons, and like, they were super easy to hit. They usually died in 1 hit. The champions were the ones that I rolled poor damage on, and they didn't die in 1 hit. But like, because monsters have better attack bonuses than armor class, if they had gotten to the guy, they would have had a chance to hurt him. Like, that lopsidedness in the math compared to players actually makes it so that those monsters are better offensively, and as a defensive measure, they just are annoying. And so your summons are dying very, very quickly because nobody wants to get hit by them, and they know that they can take them out fast, which I think is a difference than you see in Pathfinder, where sometimes those monsters are just like, I am a mighty CR10 monster. I have armor class out the wazoo and 1,000,000 hit points. You will not end me. And then that thing is like also summoning spells and lay on handsing people. And that just doesn't happen in Starfinder's summon system, which I guess goes back to that encounter breaking spells point. But generally speaking, the way that the math behind the armor class and the hit points and the action economy just sort of keeps things moving quickly. It's a very meticulously designed system under the hood that you might not notice when you're just looking at it and comparing it to Pathfinder.
I think another thing that helps Starfinder not take as long on your combat rounds, is that the number of attacks you get basically stays the same from level 1, with a couple of exceptions with some classes that get the third attack. Does anybody get 4?
No. Oh, yes. Kind of.
Who kind of gets a 4th?
The operative gets the quad attack class feature. But if you do the math, it's usually not worth doing quad attack unless you're using a really specific build built around quad attacking. And even then, it's usually just better for like putting debilitating injuries on a whole group of people.
Yeah. And even
and there's probably some monsters that can do it.
Yeah. And even when you are doing multiple attacks in Starfinder, they all use the same bonus as each other. You never have the okay, this one's plus 26, this one's plus 20, this one's plus 14, this one's plus. And the other thing is it sort of disincentivizes the need for multiple attacks as a source of damage, because the weapons just do a ton of damage per shot. Like you've got like what, 10d4 weapons, 10d6 weapons at the top end.
I'm going to tell you the most magical moment in Dead Suns was when my melee weapon soldier got a level 11 sword that does 4d8 damage per swing, and I'm just like, oh, my blade cuts through everything.
He was so happy, and that blade first cut him in half almost.
Dude, that was great. Yeah, he picked up, the monster picked up my sword and decided, hey, I'm going to stab you with it. That wasn't fun.
So how was it? It wasn't fun, but how was it to just get stabbed by your own sword? Painful. Were you proud of the sword? Would you look at the wound and go, "Good job, sword"?
The sword is a tool. You aren't proud of the sword. You have to be proud of the person wielding it. The sword is just a tool.
Do we not have enchanted swords in Starfinder that have personalities? Like they could have AIs built into them.
They could. Not yet. Owen, if you're watching, we can do this.
Imagine the stupid AIs you could have in your sword, like those cups that remind you to drink. It's like, why do you have to computerize that? Your body does that.
No. You need to have Aquasama as your AI.
You haven't stabbed anybody in the last 48 hours. Use me, please.
I've been to CES. I know what kind of crazy crap tech companies can do.
You could have the Megamine AI where you put it's installed into an automatic weapon, and the AI just doesn't know how to fire the weapon without using automatic, so it burns through every charge every single time, no matter what you do.
Your refrigerator begins to ask you, have you considered explosive grenades?
I like that these are like curses, but not curses. They're like code curses.
No, it's just the Konosuba arm weapon and armor set.
Oh, crap. It has to. It has to. There needs to be. There's a bug in the system. I mean, computer bugs and corner case scenarios exist for a reason in tech, and they need to be represented as like, oh, this sword's great, absolutely, but don't reverse the grip, or you accidentally summon an elemental.
I mean, you could also just do it like as the the perfect pun, and have like Historia 5 from the Starfinder Society just be a Sheeran. Like, because he's the bug in the system.
Oh.
Boo. Listen, I didn't promise good jokes. I promised puns. Puns are seldom good. All right, but so like that's basically about duration. Like Starfinder combats don't take long. You can usually get a good one like at your CR done in like 30 minutes to 45, an hour if it's really long. I like how Jen McTeague in chat is encouraging my puns. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. I was just telling them how great you are. Actually, I don't know if you heard that part. Then the other thing is, let's talk about encounter ending spells.
Okay. Ooh. Okay. So why don't I just power word death all the bad guys and make everything end in this? Like save all my cool high level spells and abilities to just there is the big bad evil person. It's the end of this campaign. It's going to be over in 6 seconds because I've been ready for this since level 3.
Do you want to tell him, James? Do you want to break the news to him?
I'll let you take this one.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I know you love crushing hopes and dreams.
Yeah, but this one feels like something you're a little more versed in than I am.
All of those spells don't exist in Starfinder.
No!
I think the only one that I can think of is I think Phantasmal Killer is still in the.
There, there are a
I
few of the saver death spells. I went and did a little bit of homework at the higher end, but they
yeah.
all have like CR adjustments
Mhm.
and like lots of extra saves, and some of them require touch attacks, and at
Mhm.
high levels they only deal damage unless something is lower than you in CR, which is not going to happen with a campaign villain. And basically,
Mhm.
the system has done everything it can to make that not really a thing that works anymore.
Oh, yeah, you're not kidding, because the other dirty secret is that while Starfinder monsters have a lower AC than their attack bonus, their saves are always amazing. Like, if you're fighting something your CR, you have maybe a 50% chance to hit it with a save, a spell that like requires a saving throw. And sometimes that's even against its good, like its worst save. Like, we had situations where we were fighting monsters that were like 3 CR higher than us, and those things just would not fail saves against spells unless they rolled like less than an 8. And it's like, oh, like a lot of those spells, if they don't have rider effects or like partials or halves, like it is just brutally hard to land them. It's actually one of the reasons why our group says that Mind Thrust is the best damage spell in the game, because it does damage comparable to like a normal weapon attack if you pass, and if you fail, it's like you crit them. like,
Which is
like
actually
Yeah.
not something I'm going to put in the good column for Starfinder. The fact that your casters waste half their turns and abilities that are a limited resource, but it does at least
I
prevent this from happening.
it's a tough call, because how do you have spells that can end the game, like with like how do you do that, like how do you protect against those and make them like really special moments, while at the same time making it so that like ordinary spells with saves or sucks like don't work. It's actually something when I was running a Starfinder Society game for someone who's playing a Witch Warper. It was a major problem that we cited with the class. It's like this entire spell list is save or nothing happens, and like so a monster saves are so good that the Witch Warper was throwing out these spells and like they were doing nothing.
Right,
Like,
but the
and that's
solution of pumping up the saves, like you said, is causing that problem because Yap keeps the save or campaigns
right.
over spells from happening, but it also keeps all the cool, interesting things that are not problematic from happening.
Well,
Exactly.
I think it just changes what your spell's choice is. You go for stuff that's more buff related. You might go for
Yeah.
stuff that's more flat damage, because even if you pass for half, you're still doing a significant amount of damage. It just changes what you're after on those spells. Instead of going, I'm just going to hit a bunch of home runs like you tend to search for in Pathfinder, you kind of work on what you think your best chances are.
Yeah, it definitely is something that's a little frustrating, because like you have a lot of these really cool save or suck spells like Baleful Polymorph, and it's like I'm never gonna get to Baleful Polymorph you. And it's not even like Baleful Polymorph is as strong in Starfinder as it is in Pathfinder. It falls into the category of spells that are just like they've been changed to the point where the enemy has plenty of opportunity to not be destroyed by that spell. Like you have to fail a lot of saves to the point where Baleful Polymorph turns you into an animal. It probably won't happen during the course of a single combat unless you just stand around, take no actions, and laugh at that monster as it continuously fails its saves.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, because of how the saves work, like I just have the NPC array for a combatant at 11th
Mhm.
level. Their will saves a +10, which is pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
And
going to give them roughly a 40% chance of a equal level like
right.
um,
Well, so
caster.
with that, the average roll that they'd get is a 20, because they'd roll a 10 on a 20-sided die, right?
Hmm.
And then if you're at 10 CR10, you would have access to fourth level spells.
Or
So if
CR
you're
11.
CR11, that'd still be fourth level. That's fine.
Hmm.
So that would be meaning your minimum DC is 14. At that level, your key ability score is probably like a 22 as a pretty conservative estimate at that level. So
Hmm.
that would be a +6. So we're looking at a 20 DC. And then if you took spell focus at that level, you'd have a 21, which means
Yeah,
that monster is going to pass 45% of the time.
yeah, and the spell focus would be up one at that level, I believe.
At 11th level, yeah. So it would
Hmm.
be 40% of the time it's going to pass, which
Hmm.
the problem is that from a game design perspective, a coin flip is never fun.
Yeah, I also think of these spells are also written from the other side, where you're playing a game and then you're like, well, I fell a save. I guess I'm a rat for the rest of this character's short life.
Yeah, and so I think that's a legitimate concern. You know, for Baleful Polymorph, it's the case of like you have to fail enough saves to get that penalty to the point where you could turn them into a rat. Like it's a lot of saves, and I think that one's fine because of it. But it does suffer from the fact that it has this downside of like, you know, you need to fail I think it's 3 or 4 saves in order to get turned into a rat or whatever. And but then those saves have a 20%, a 40% chance of passing. Like that's really good. So I think that there are a lot of part of it is like a playstyle difference. Like when you get to Starfinder, it just comes down to the fact that if you have save or suck spells, you're better off using against those. You're better off using them to bully people, people that you know are weaker than. Like, don't waste. Like, use your spells to get rid of low level characters that you could just wipe off the board. It's not like in Pathfinder where you use your best spells against the biggest, baddest enemy to take them out. Like, those spells are for the little guy. just turn Joe it's like in World of Warcraft. You don't polymorph Jaina Proudmoore. You polymorph that no-name Alliance soldier over.
Ted.
Yeah, Ted McLion Band. Dan Eagleman. There you go.
Dan Eagleman. Got it.
Polymorph Dan Eagleman. So yeah, but generally because of that, those high-level spells don't really hurt. And going into teleportation, we haven't gotten to teleportation magic yet, have we?
No. Teleportation. We call it teleportation, but in a lot of ways, I think Starfinder can exacerbate that issue with with so many access to vehicles and travel methods. So, how does high-level Starfinder deal with the concept of skipping the middle, going straight to the end?
It leans into it. It just kind of says, if you found a way to get around this, good on you. It's our fault for not designing something to accommodate this.
Yeah, just drive away. You'll be fine.
I think there's a good point when, after knowing what was done with Pathfinder vehicles, that in Starfinder Society, vehicles are explicitly allowed to be purchased. Certain ones are prohibited, but like you can buy a tour bus, you can buy a fleet of motorcycles.
I knew you were going to say tour bus.
Of course, it's what I have the most. It's the one I have the most like experience with. But like,
I know. Just for reference to all of our listeners, if you haven't heard this story before, James's envoy, the esteemed interstellar pop star Mitsuko Hane, bought herself a tour bus. So if you're ever at a Starfinder Society's event and all of a sudden this android with a tour bus pops out, you'll know you've had the pleasure of playing with Mitsuko Hane.
It's like it was 26,000 credits, very well spent. Also, there are teleportation pucks, like in Armory, I believe. So there are things that give non-magical characters the ability to use a magical mode of transportation.
Teleportation pucks, those are my favorite because they were my suggestion.
Really? They remind me of like Sombra's Translocator, because that's pretty much how they work.
Yeah.
From Overwatch.
So good. Jen McTeague in the chat says, I want to ride the tour bus.
Hey, if we ever get to play, I don't keep anybody out. You know, it's a safe place. Last time we used it to protect us from a storm of tumbleweeds, and it got wrecked up, but I fixed it.
I mean, and you'll be at Gen Con, so hey, Gentique, hey, maybe you'll get in a game with James at Gen Con. Then you too can ride the tour bus.
It is a very fun beginning to a Starfinder Society scenario when you go, does this ship have enough room for a bus?
Is the answer ever no?
No, nobody's ever told me no yet.
No. Why would you say no to somebody who spent 26,000 of their credits on a tour bus? Like, you're just a monster at that point. Like, come on, it is a tour bus. Any GM worth their salt looks at a tour bus owned by their player and says, I can do so much with this. Right? Do you remember that time where it was supposed to get like an escort out to the camp, the Black Moon Survey camp, and I was just like, you were like, I want to drive my tour bus. I was like, fine, you drive your tour bus. Like, there you go, 26,000 credits, well spent.
Yeah.
You can leave this adventure whenever you want.
So yeah, the game just kind of leads into those ways of getting around obstacles by just being the adventures themselves being better created, and that's a little more difficult, especially if you're on the home route and you're maybe not giving that the proper foresight.
Yeah,
and also to specifically counter teleportation is less effective when the range of your next destination is 3 star systems over.
Yes. Or in the next hallway over because you're on a dead space station. Like, what are you going to do? Teleport outside? It's not an option.
The vast distances make teleportation both easier to manage and less game breaking. Like, yes, you can use teleport to get out of a fight, but like at that point, by the time you get regular teleport, like that's a 5th level spell. You are 13th level. You can do other things with your time. And as far as like stopping the plot, it like you're assumed to have a starship. Like the distance you could travel in that is insane. It's not going to end your campaign.
Right. And
but,
also, who's going to do the long trek across the jungle wilderness when you can just hop in your starship and or tour bus and go there? Like, we don't. I'm going to freaking Seattle next month, and I sure as heck ain't hiking through the freaking Grand Canyon to get there.
Totally.
Yeah, that's the wrong direction too. Don't go that way.
Yeah, that's too far south, Param.
That's okay, Param. Also, like, and Starfinder does have examples of just like breaking things with teleportation. Alex and I did an Eyes of the 10 game where our conjuration teleportation wizard just went, well, we're skipping like 3 encounters because the scenario writers didn't account for you to be able to do this.
Yeah. And it was wholeheartedly accepted by our GM.
Yeah. And
Tim was like, this is on them. You skip to this final part. Enjoy. And we're like, we will.
Yeah, and I also ran the capstone of season 4 with the Rune Lord Kroon, and the teleportation of that same conjuration wizard is what won that fight for them.
Yeah. So, that conjuration wizard, Robin's conjuration wizard, she is clutch. Nobody ever said anything bad about what is it?
Arare.
Yeah. Arare was clutch. Yeah. He who controls the speed controls the life.
Yeah, so like if you ever have the ideas that teleport's not that bad, you can't use it to gain tactical advantage. Properly built, you totally can.
Oh, totally. Oh, totally. Literally, the only reason we did as well in that fight as we did is because we could keep up step for step with Kroon, who is also a teleportation wizard.
Yeah, so like, and stop some of the things he was doing.
Oh, it was so great. But... It was so great. If you've never played, that game, I think that it is probably on my list of top 10 adventures you should definitely play before PF1 ends.
It is a masterclass in high level like society Pathfinder play. It is so good.
It is very good. I'd say that one, Sanctum of the Sages, is really good too.
Oh, so good.
And what's the other one that's really good? It's the first part of Eyes of the 10. I would say would be definitely my top 3.
Since you have been arming all of those Pathfinder Society players with these spoilers, that leads us into the final method that makes high level play problematic: divination.
Oh, can do you want to give him this answer, Param, or should I?
I'm
sorry, James. I meant James. I'm sorry. I was watching chat about all the people blowing up about how Sanctum of the Sages is a murder.
It is very good and very hard.
Yes, thank you, chat.
So divination is equally helpful and useless in most games. A lot of people kind of go, "Will we die in this next room?" And the diviner has to go, "Maybe if you suck." Like the questions that players ask are limited by the knowledge that they're given ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So as far as with writing goes, divination doesn't give players information they didn't already have access to solve. It just it's a hint. It gives them a piece on the puzzle.
Man, your answer was way different than mine was going to be.
Oh, what was yours?
Scrying doesn't exist in Starfinder, so it's not a problem.
Yeah.
Literally, there's a scrying sub-school, like a scrying descriptor, but the scrying spell does not exist. It is, like, there is no way for you to take your magic peep eye and, like, send it into Kroon's house to watch him while he sleeps. So Starfinder decided that wasn't cool. Like, it's gone. Like, if you want divination, you're just asking the gods for a random hint. Like, that's all you've got.
Wait, hold on. Wait, I didn't realize this.
What?
That scrying isn't in there. Hold on.
Yeah, no, scrying. Trust me, scrying is gone. I had to search through this. I figure out what spells were around, what spells were.
But why does Private Sanctum exist specifically saying it doesn't let you scry into something?
Because scrying doesn't exist.
Yeah, because they still haven't made Space Wizard a class yet. They might one day.
I mean,
I didn't realize this. Holy crap! I played it 2 years and I didn't realize.
It's so funny because like they preemptively built so many spells assuming that scrying exists because
Yeah.
scrying is a key part of the game, and they probably figured, hey, if our fan base wants backwards compatibility and they're importing stuff, we should say that this still doesn't work with scrying. But like scrying does not exist as a spell in Starfinder. Apparently, like this amazingly spell that nobody would ever actually like be able to replace with technology was just lost to the gap. Like everybody forgot how to scry. That's the real cause of the gap.
So
There
every
is one
time I want to
spell
scry, I've got to cast Wish.
So there is one spell that has a divination scrying descriptor, and that is Clairaudience Clairvoyance.
Yeah.
But that is only 400 plus 40 feet per level range.
Yeah. That's the only scrying spell in the game. Like scry as like the iconic scry spell, the one that people use to break games, that one doesn't. Because what Param was talking about earlier with scry and fry is basically where you would cast scrying to look at a location and then look at it long enough, because scry has a duration of concentration, that you would just stare at it until you were familiar enough with it that you could teleport there with teleport. And so then usually what people would do is they would scry on the end boss if they knew who the boss was, and then everybody would teleport there. If you ever wondered,
it's not even that. There are some magic options available that using scry and different spells would let you target them with spells. You could literally just pull up the equivalent of Magic iPhone app and say, "You die now," and never even get close to the dungeon.
Yamagi light it. Also, that's why they should all have non-detection.
Right.
That's actually what Chad is saying. Like, scrying does not exist because everyone blocked everything from being scryed. So everyone forgot how to do it because it was always useless.
No, so it's like viruses on Macs.
Yeah. I mean, I'm willing to accept that answer, but I think the real reason, the answer of, and I don't want, it's not true, but I just think the fact that nobody wants to put scrying in the game because giving that a tool to give that much information to players is problematic, because it makes problems that require gameplay to solve no longer require actual gameplay to solve.
And to invert what you just said, all the Starfinder adventures have to be written with the knowledge that they live in a world where Space Google exists. So being unable to find out common or even obscure knowledge can't be written as a obstacle goal in your game as easily. So being able to instantly gain access to obscure knowledge is something we can all do with our wrist-mounted computers while we're sitting on the Epsilon station. So you have to be a little bit more creative in how you design your challenges.
So I agree. One thing that I will point out that has nothing to do with what you just said, though, is that the book does say that different planets have their own infospheres, because planets are so far apart that wireless receivers can't actually transmit the information from each other. So, like, it's reasonable to say that you can't space Google certain topics on certain planets. Like,
if they're in the same community, like in the Pact worlds, that wouldn't make a lot of sense because, well, we've thought about this a lot as a society, and light speed travel exists, and actually light speed as a barrier exists on Earth to the point that that we have solved this problem on Earth with, which is what they're called caches, server caches. It's the reason that Netflix doesn't completely break the internet, is because Netflix decided that, hey, everybody wants all this data, so they made a deal with your local ISP to literally put a Netflix box at your local city level so that you can go there. And a lot of sci-fi has explored the topic of what are we going to do when that happens, and the answer is that storage is going to be so easy at that technology level that they just basically strap a burst transmission onto starships that are traveling between the area, and just, you don't get live connection, but every day or so somebody blasts in here. It's like, here's the update to the internet today. Download it, servers.
Coming in hot.
So that's actually really funny, because that's the answer that I gave in this week's not this week's but next week's pop culture companion too, our pop culture catalog. It's all about infosphere sites. And I was like, yeah, well, they just they have ships that fly around and update everybody's infospheres, because why wouldn't you do that? Like, it's easy.
Yeah, especially if wireless transmission is quick.
Old Man's War explores this topic in a lot of details if you're interested in a sci-fi book that is both very good and informative, as a lot of potential speculative technology might mean.
So we talked about why duration doesn't break Starfinder. How on that? We talked about why spells don't really break Starfinder endgame Starfinder combat. We talked about why like height and like flying don't do it, and we talked about why teleportation doesn't do it,
And
And we
divination.
and divination.
and
We talked
time.
about everything and time. I
So
thought you actually,
we're out of options. We've talked about all the ways Pathfinder usually breaks at high level, except rocket tag. You mentioned
there is no
rocket
rocket
tag.
tag. Rocket tag doesn't exist.
So I will say, and this is something that we learned from the I specifically learned from the playtest. If you're converting Pathfinder monsters to Starfinder monsters, be careful of bringing anything over that has a template, especially if that creature is something where
Yep.
their abilities scale based off something like Constitution, like a poison, because you will
Yep.
kill everybody. They will
Yeah.
all die.
Listen, just don't. Alien Archive 1 exists now. Just build the monster from that and adapt the abilities that you want. Like
Yeah.
just use all of the math from that book and then just port it over. It's so much. As someone who was on the receiving end of that Scorpion lady,
It
yes,
was a
don't do
Contable
it.
Blue. It was
Blah.
fine. I mean,
No,
it was just a DC 28 Fortitude save at 13th level. Come on, get on its level.
no, we all died.
Yeah,
Every
you
single
did.
one of us died.
Yeah, so yeah, if you are converting, just ignore templates at least. So
Spoiler alerts: Pathfinder is not actually compatible with Starfinder.
No.
Like
no.
at least you can do it; it'll work, but you have to be prepared for the fact that whatever Pathfinder thing comes over is going to be grossly overpowered using Starfinder's reduced math. And
Yeah, you're gonna have to redesign it anyway.
yeah, you just might as well redesign it. There's no reason not to. It's too easy unless it's a player option.
So is there any other things, aspects of high level Starfinder? Like what in ways is high level Starfinder unique and fun that doesn't exist in previous games we might have played?
Well, do you need a minute to think, James?
Yeah, you can take this one.
Okay. So I play. One of the weird things about Starfinder is that even compared to the core rulebook in Pathfinder, there really are not a whole lot of feats. And this was a problem that I ran into as a soldier because I get a combat feat every 2 levels, and I get a regular feat every 2 levels. So we hit about 10th or 11th level, and I ran out of feats to take. Or I should say, I ran out of feats that I could count on using every single combat. Because there aren't many feats that you like really need. The game gives you most of them. I got weapon specialization for. I took weapon focus. I took step up and strike, but that's a niche feat. I took spring attack. I took mobility, like all of these things that I sometimes use, and then I got to the point where like I'm never going to use great cleave. I'm never going to use lunge. I'm never going to use something else. And what I ended up doing was I actually picked up a feat that I never thought I was going to take. I took adaptive fighting. And the reason is that adaptive fighting is a feat that once per day you pick from a list of feats you've already specified, and you gain that feat for 1 minute once a day. And like I was like, I get options. I'm never gonna want to take. And then what ended up happening? Well, if I take this feat and I pick feats that I'm never going to use, and the first time a situation pops up that I can use that feat, I use this. I was like, then it'll have been worth it. So I took a whole bunch of feats that I never actually want, but some I will begrudgingly admit are sometimes useful. And then I was like, all right, this is life. And literally the very first combat we did after that was us against 8 low CRs, like undead space marines. And I was just like, I have great cleave. I have great cleave for 1 minute. And I just started spinning around, and so many bone soldiers died that I can't tell you. It was at least 4. They just stood there and they were like, we don't know how to do this fight this spinning blade.
It's like doing martial flexibility as a brawler and taking aquatic combatant. Yeah, it would have felt really crappy to take that skill, or feat. But man, when you can just do it for a minute, good choice.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? Like for me, like I'm sure that as Starfinder progresses and more combat feats are introduced into the game, I'll have less reason to want adaptive fighting. But being in a situation where I was like, I have everything I will reliably use. Let me just pick up this dumb feat for 1 minute. Like it was great. It was really good.
All right. So it is unfortunate that we are running up on time. So those of you can expect to see us as convention season is coming up. We've got couple of really exciting episodes to look forward to. We are going to have an interview upcoming here with Lou Agresta of the Grimmer Space Project. So those of you that are excited about Grimmer Space, we will have some fun things to talk about there. Other than that, also, PaizoCon and Gen Con are coming up. We have cool things we'll announce soon there, but you can totally expect the network to have a presence if you want to interact with us. So, we look forward to seeing many of you there, as well as we appreciate all of you who have tuned in today. So thank you for watching the show, especially those of you just live and took time out here. And we love all of those that also listen to us in audio and our YouTube. Also, there's a whole lot of you watching the Twitch archives, a Twitch-based VOD audience. That's cool. We never expected that to exist. We're sorry we missed your comments for a couple of months because we didn't think they would exist. But I'm now checking those pretty regularly. If you want to comment on any of our VODs, we will be able to chat with you and answer you back. If you want to chat with us, though, you want to do so on our Discord server. It's the chillest place to hang out and talk about Starfinder or Pathfinder. You can get there via the Discord link on our website at nodirectionpodcast.com, which is also where you will find an amazing amount of Pathfinder and Starfinder content every single day, as our amazing bloggers, two of which are my co-hosts here. Yep. You will enjoy that content. Also, this episode and the other episodes on the network would not be possible without our supporters on Patreon. Your donations is what keeps this network going and keeps our equipment from exploding, and is also about to help pay for a whole lot of recorders for Gen Con and PaizoCon for reasons that are pretty obvious for anybody that has paid attention to our network. We appreciate all the support. It's what makes the expanded amount of content on the network possible. If you wish to become a patron and gain access to patron benefits, including, sneak peeks as well as other cool advantages, you can do so by going to the Patreon link at nodirectionpodcast.com. Just click on the Patreon button there and join. We appreciate it. As always, like, comment, subscribe, tweet, retweet. Good Lord, we're on everything. So all of those options are available. We appreciate it. It helps support the network and spread the word. And
I have a shout
James,
out, by the way.
James, you got a shout out.
Yeah. There's a convention in Philly coming up on May 10th through 12th. It's on Sealy Court. Sorry, they flip them between. I'll be GMing some Starfinder there, and also hopefully we're trying to get a special table together there. It's in Philadelphia if you're local there. Mm-hmm. I could put the link in the Discord under looking for games or whatever, but it'd be good to have people come.
Yep.
I'm going to run the special if we have enough people. You could sit at my table and get horrifically maimed. You'll have so much fun. You won't need those limbs.
Also, keep your eye out for Stellar, since we were talking about Stellar, and since Mitsuke Hane has become a topic, pay attention to a particular Bears t-shirt when you are watching Stellar episodes.
Listen, we didn't say she's an interstellar pop star for no reason.
Oh, daggone it, Alex. All right, everyone. Until next time, go beyond with no direction.